Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Maverick News channel. Tons of stuff going on. And of course, breaking news tonight, the National Guardsman shot. And we have this live feed coming from Fox 4 News. No, they just pulled back on that. So let me reconvene on that. And also tonight, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on with the Ukraine peace talks, likely update what's going on with the situation in Venezuela. And I want to comment as well on last night's thumbnail, which was posted on some channels, Murderous Thugs, which was a quote from Elon Musk. And it also relates to the story about the woman who was set on fire in Chicago. So we'll probably try to get into that. We've also got Mike McCarrick joining us live. So we'll come to him on the other side of this. He'll help us understand what's going on with that, with the peace deal, or the peace talks involving Ukraine, Russia. Be right back after this.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on Earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching.
The world is watching. On TV, the entire world is watching. On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Okay, let's bring Mike McCarrick in. Hello, Mike. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Are you okay for me to put you up on the screen?
Yeah, I just evidently my light's not good, so I'll adjust that in a little bit.
Okay, no problem. Well, thank you for joining us on the program.
No worries.
Very eventful day, tragic day.
Geez, it's been an eventful week.
Yes. And these, I honestly, everything's changing so quickly.
Yes.
I can't be sure of anything at the moment, but because just a while ago, we were hearing that these two National Guard members were targeted in this DC attack and that they had passed away. But now I'm seeing headlines saying that they're in critical condition. So I'm thinking that there may have been a mistake or misreporting.
It was a misreporting that the West Virginia, the governor of West Virginia, had misreported that they had died. But yeah, that was evidently wrong. So,
wow. Yeah. That's why you have to be so careful to make sure you get information from credible sources.
Well, and in fast moving situations like this, it's funny as I work on my resume when you're talking about military service that you have experience leading and operating in fast moving situations where, you know, things change. And when you have or I'm sure this is everybody uses the drinking from the fire hose kind of a thing. You just have to be really careful. And this is one of the reasons why people train police and the National Guard in this instance, but the people above them would also be thinking like this, where they have to fall back on their training, where some of that is you can only act on what you actually know, and you have to be self-aware enough to know of what you don't know. And if you're going on a guess, then you have to be aware of that. So yeah, when you're talking about being really careful of your sources of information, that's like fundamental to military training. And I'm sure these guardsmen and their commanding sergeants and officers would know this.
Yeah, I even see Kash Patel may have misspoken.
Well, that's would not be a first.
Yes, because he said that they'd apprehended the suspect,
I had heard that too. Was that wrong?
No, I think that's right. But then he turned around and said that they would something about how they were going to make an arrest. They were confident they were going to make an arrest, but they already had the suspect in custody.
That sounds to me like they didn't know it. That's just weird. I'll have to look at that statement. That sounds to me like Kash Patel is in over his head, that he is not qualified for his current job. Or he needs to have an actual spokesman that is the person that goes in front of the cameras and not Kash Patel.
Yeah, here it is. Here, I've got the clip. I'll bring it up. I was like,
absolutely, because this I hadn't heard this. I had heard that the suspect had been shot on the scene and was also in the hospital.
Yeah, there is video out there that maybe I can find as well of the arrest being affected. So here's the clip of Kash Patel kind of jumbling his words, I guess.
You can see behind me, we have assembled the full force of both the federal and state and local law enforcement agencies to bring bear all of our resources to make sure we find the perpetrators responsible for this heinous act. And make no mistake, they will be brought to justice. You can see behind me, we have assembled the full force.
They already arrested the guy.
Yeah.
Unless they're looking for more. Oops. Did
you lose me?
There we go. I did, but you're back up. Sorry.
Yeah, he's not the best guy in front of a camera. That's been proven again and again. Yeah, so to be fair to Patel, if it is indeed a fast-moving situation, he's obviously speaking off the cuff. That's why I said he might need to get a professional spokesperson, because that's a skill that not everyone has. If you don't have, prepared remarks in front of you, there's a lot of people that will just fall on their face if they're in that situation. So yeah, it looked to me like he was in the situation and didn't really know what to say. He didn't have his words prepared. He was not extemporaneous speaker prepared. Yeah, he should maybe not be the person in front of the microphone anymore.
Yeah, so the suspect was taken into custody. I know he was held down. The authorities are saying that his wounds, whatever they are not believed to be life-threatening.
And I don't know who shot him, but depending on what situation you're in, I can see that.
And there's Trump's post here. I've got it on Truth Social. So he's responding. And of course, in typical Trump fashion, he's picking colorful language. Here, I'll put it up on the screen. Right there, it says, the animal that shot the two National Guardsmen, with both being critically wounded and now in two separate hospitals, is also severely wounded, but regardless, will pay a very steep price. God bless our great National Guard and all of our military and law enforcement. These are truly great people. I, as President of the United States, and everyone associated with the office of the presidency, am with you. So,
well, obviously, you don't want people shooting your guardsmen.
Right.
It doesn't help that this is complicated by a federal judge recently ruled that The deployment of the Guard was itself illegal, because we have laws in the United States, and there are very strict rules on what military can do and what police can do. I do one of my very early trainings in the Air Force. It was in basic training, but it was reinforced in the very first official leadership school I went to, which they send people that are about to be brand spanking new sergeants, the lowest rank of sergeant. So it was early in my career. But one of the specific things they said is they tried to define where you had authority and where you did not, because as soon as you put on sergeant stripes, you gain significant authority. And one of the things they explicitly reinforced, again, repeated, was that if you're off base in the civilian world and you come across a crime or witness a car crash or any of those sorts of things, you have no authority. You are basically the same as every other Joe Sixpack that's on the road right there. If you have some knowledge, you can maybe try and render aid like any average citizen could do, but you don't have authority to direct traffic. You don't have authority to arrest anyone. You have exactly zero authority. And that's one of the reasons why the Guard on the streets of any American city is a real problem. It violates our laws.
Yeah, there are pictures on social media of what some are claiming are images of the arrest. Some of the images don't seem to mesh together for me.
Well, and like I said, this is such a recent event, and the fast moving situation.
Here, I'll show you what I mean. So it's like you've got, is this the right page? Yeah, I think so. Yep. So there's Patel. But as you scroll down, maybe scroll back up is what I need to do here.
I've been busy all day, so I haven't watched any of this.
Yeah, me either. Like it just came across to me about an hour beforehand.
Sure.
But when I look at this, and maybe with your background, you'll understand.
I don't see that person wearing any clothes.
I know that's the thing that I'm finding very weird about it, because
so
when I look back
when
and I look
you
at some of these other images, it looks like the suspect has clothes.
So when you're wounded and you're triaging somebody, you're basically trying to figure out how badly they're wounded, because you have to assess breathing first. Do they have a heart rate, and is there any serious bleeding? And to know if they have any serious bleeding, one of the things you might have to do is cut their clothes off. So
I think this is authentic footage of the actual arrest. That looks right to me.
I think I might see a cop in there, the guy in black. Maybe there's several people in black there. And
yeah, there's looks like one, two, a bunch of police officers.
Yeah, a whole handful of them. It looks like. It looks like some of those are Guard, but
yes. Yeah, I see at least 4 guardsmen.
I don't see any guardsmen acting illegally, so there's that. It looks like the police are controlling the situation. Looks like Guard, they're rendering aid. Those might even be medics. I'm trying to figure out what's on their, either on their sleeve or on their back. It's a really weird video.
Yeah, and I'm
There's
just wondering, like,
something reflective, and I couldn't tell what it was.
So this guy, did he move? Because they're there at that opening.
Maybe they tackled him. I don't know.
And then it seems like it moves down the sidewalk. There's somebody laying on the ground there.
Yeah, that's somebody that.
Is that one of the guardsmen that was shot?
Maybe.
That's
I can't
what
tell.
it is. Okay.
With this video, I can't tell.
Yes, you've got one guy laying on the ground, another guy to the right that it looks like they're arresting, and then a second person laying on the ground near what looks like a bus shelter.
So it's strange. It just occurred to me when I say I can't tell, there's not enough information. It occurred to me that one of the things that we are taught in the military, and especially as you gain rank, this is repeated again and again and again, is that a lot of people, especially today, are very uncomfortable saying they don't know. They want to appear competent or whatever the reason is. That people have a problem saying, I don't know. And we explicitly train people to, especially when things are going fast and there's a whole bunch of confusing information that might or might not be clear. If you start acting like you know, if you assume something and then you start acting on something you don't actually know, that can create yet more problems. So it's kind of an issue.
So what we do know is that 2 National Guard members were shot this afternoon. It appears to be some kind of targeted attack, according to authorities, near the White House. Both are in critical condition, not dead. That coming from Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser. And then we have this West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey said in a statement that the Guard members were from his state and had died, but he later walked that back, saying his office had received conflicting reports about their status.
Yeah. And that's one of the problems if you start acting on stuff you don't actually know.
Yeah. And Washington police say a suspect is in custody. The scene is secure. The FBI will initially investigate the shooting as a possible act of terrorism, according to 2 senior U.S. law enforcement officials.
Yeah, something in DC with military members, I can see that at least at the start the FBI might be involved, but it might just be something stupid, you know?
Yeah, and the president saying that the shooter also severely injured, and we just read his full statement, such as it is on Truth Social. So very alarming. What do you?
Be interesting to who put the shooter down. It would be interesting who did that, because I hesitate to say in this situation that a guardsman shooting back would be wrong. The guardsman shouldn't necessarily be armed, but if in cases of a direct threat to the individual, it's part of international law and the laws that the military works under. You have an inherent right to self-defense. And so if somebody shoots at you, you have the right to shoot back. But it'd be interesting what the details are of this.
Details, that's the important thing, because we don't really know.
Yeah, there's a lot of
motivation. Right, what's behind this? What really were the reasons? Don't know at this point. So big question mark. Although, is the use of the word terrorism, or saying that it may be investigated that way, automatic because it involves
I think Trump's all wound up on the terrorism thing, and he gets hyperbolic all the time, especially when people are criticizing him. He does not like to be criticized at all. It really gets under his skin. And so because he ordered the guard to into DC, and the judge ruled that his orders were illegal, and there's various other things where military veterans have been saying, look, you don't have to obey an illegal order. If the order is illegal, that's something that you actually should not obey. And so there's this whole background to it. And now if a guardsman gets shot, then Trump might, go over the edge. He's not exactly in control of his emotions, unfortunately.
Well, I hope level heads prevail here, because this, in my view, is exactly the kind of thing that could escalate very easily, because emotions are running so high, and it's not just in that city, but across the country. Yes.
It's ugly right now in the U.S.
Yeah. It's spilling over into Canada too, to a degree. It is. We're so closely related, our countries, because we are related. We're like family.
Siblings, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I don't know. And speaking of hurting Trump's feelings, are you able to comment, or do you feel comfortable commenting on his call for executions of political opponents who called on military personnel to not follow unlawful or illegal orders?
Yeah, so that was that's a real problem. I can't think of another time in the United States history where a sitting senator and decorated military veteran got up in front of a camera and clearly stated everything that the military has been teaching for the last 100 years, where in the military, the rules for court-martial, Articles 91 and 92 of the UCMJ. You might go back to Article 90, but those are the ones that deal with obeying orders and following regulations and things like that. And then the Manual for Courts Martial clearly defines, because in Articles 90, 91, and 92, you are required to obey all lawful orders. You don't have to agree with them, but if it's lawful, you have to obey it. And this is important because in an emergency situation, you've got junior people that aren't necessarily in the know, and you've got people that are responsible for actually figuring things out, and they're the ones that are giving orders. And the junior people have to trust the people above them, and they just need to follow them. But we're also taught, starting all the way in basic training, that if it's an illegal order, if it violates an American law, if it violates the Constitution, if it violates a military regulation, which military regulation in the UCMJ is defined as what they call a standing order, where they wrote it down and it's just, you have to follow it. It's considered an order that's just there. And the regulations govern a whole bunch of things. Like if you're in supply and inventory, and how often do you need to inventory? These regulations are standing orders. But if it violates a law, if it violates a regulation, if it violates the Constitution, if it violates international law, because the military deals with the law of our conflict, so you're talking about war crimes. If somebody orders you to violate a war crime, you are duty bound to not only disobey that order, but also to report it to what they call competent authority. And so if you are being ordered by your immediate chain of command, your sergeant, your unit commander, if they are ordering you to commit a war crime, obviously your immediate chain of command is not considered competent authority. You can question it, but they gave the order. There's a problem already. So you are obligated to find competent authority, whether it's your boss's boss, the next level up, whether it's a military lawyer or a chaplain or a medical personnel in the military. And if your chain of command is completely fracked, as Battlestar Galactica would say, then you are authorized to go to certain foreign or civilian sources. So you can go to a journalist, you can go to the Red Cross. So there's all of these, and these are standing orders that if you have this sort of an illegal order, you are required under standing order to go report them to a competent authority. So not only are you required to disobey, you're required to report them. So it's a big thing. It's important. This is how you have a military that has honor, that has respect, that when somebody sees your people, American soldiers in uniform, there's a certain amount of respect and deference to them. And if that starts falling apart, then we have a real problem. This is one of the reasons why disobeying illegal orders is a big problem. You also have it in smaller items. Sorry, I'm getting too detailed too, but you need to kind of understand that there's an entire scope. So you've got big war crimes that everybody would agree, but you've got smaller stuff too, where what if your sergeant or your unit commander is abusing their office and saying, look, I need you to go pick up my dry cleaning, or I need you to babysit my kids this weekend and I'm not paying you, that kind of a thing, right? So these are very small things where they're abusing their authority, because in this case, they're not necessarily violating a law, but they are abusing their position because these are things that they do not have the legal authority to give orders on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, for instance, in one of our more stupid things that's happened recently, the president and the Secretary of Defense do not have the legal authority to rebrand the Department of Defense. They do not have that authority to rebrand it as the Department of War. So there's an entire other section of disobeying illegal orders and reporting them. And in the military, this category was called fraud, waste, and abuse, FWA. And so this rebranding of the Department of Defense, by some estimates, either already has or will eventually cost up to $2 billion. That's a lot of scratch. It's a lot of money, even in American military dollars. $2 billion is a couple of dozen fighter jets, brand new. That's a lot of money. So when this is why we have FWA reporting, is the military has a limited budget. We have expensive things that we need to buy, which means that we can't be wasting money on garbage, So rebranding it to a Department of War because Hegseth has a bug, this to me would be clear fraud, waste, and abuse. That not only am I legally obligated to disobey that order, I'm obligated to report this. So Hegseth fired all of his inspector generals, a lot of his judge advocate generals. Those are military lawyers, JAGs. They got fired or quit. So this looks to me like the competent authority in my chain of command is broken, which means I have to report this kind of thing to Congress. So this is a tangled web, and I'm so sorry that I'm making this complicated, but the president's the commander in chief. This is spelled out in the Constitution. He has the authority to command the armed forces in times of war. And as part of the executive branch, it's in times of peace, he has the command authority to prepare, how the training goes, things like that. However, Congress has the authority over the budget. The Congress writes and passes the budget, so the total dollars that we have. And so Hegseth devoting $2 billion to renaming a department that he doesn't have the authority to rename, and using money that Congress never allocated for that purpose. So you can see that there's various layers of illegal here. But Congress also, the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice that I quoted, Articles 90, 91, and 92, Hegseth was trying to go for Article 134. That's discredit to the military, which isn't going to fly either. But the Uniform Code of Military Justice is part of United States law. It falls under Title 10 of the United States Code of Law. Laws in the United States are written and passed by Congress. So Congress has the authority to write and amend the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The UCMJ is a congressional document. The president can sign or veto it, but it's Congress's baby. Congress also has oversight authority, because part of the purse strings and the legal authority to set the UCMJ, Congress also sets the number of personnel. So there's roughly, I can't remember right now, but there's roughly about 1.2 million people in active duty in the U.S. military right now across all branches. Congress sets that number. It says the Air Force will have this number of enlisted members and this number of officers. All of the officer promotions, so lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, general officer, all officer promotions are approved by Congress. If an officer in the U.S. military gets promoted, that is congressional authority. It is an act of Congress. It was approved by Congress. So Congress has a lot going on here. They have oversight of the personnel, they have oversight of the UCMJ, and they have oversight over the money. So Congress definitely has authority over the United States military. Congress, we can also go into this later for the Venezuela stuff, but Congress also has the exclusive authority to declare war. That is not the president's authority. That is Congress. So there's that. The other part is the UCMJ is a set of laws, and the military has JAGs. They're officers in the United States military. They're lawyers. They're trained lawyers. They're lawyers trained in military law. And we have our courts martial system, various types of general, and all the other types of courts martial. But those have similar, defendants have certain rights. There's the appeal process. Once the military courts martial, so all of the legal proceedings inside of the military, once that's completed, you can appeal to a civilian federal appeals court for the armed forces that's located in Washington, D.C. This is part of the judicial branch. Okay? Does this make sense? So it's not just the president. And then over this appeals court comes the Supreme Court. So anything having to do with breaking military regulations or the UCMJ or war crimes or anything like that, ultimately is under the authority of the judicial branch. So the president does not have exclusive command of the military by design. We did not want a king that could order his troops to do all of these things. That is explicitly what we did not want. We fought a revolution to stop that. So there's a lot of Trump's reaction. And the senator, Mark Kelly, I don't know if your people know who Mark Kelly is. He is a captain in the United States Navy. He's a retired captain. This is a very high rank. It is officer grade 6, that if you were talking about the Air Force, the Army, or the Marine Corps, they would call this a full bird colonel or just a plain colonel. The step under that, 05, and the other branch is a lieutenant colonel. So this is a very high rank. This rank would have a command of an aircraft carrier that is a $14 billion piece of hardware with $100 million aircraft and 5,000 highly trained, highly experienced, very expensive sailors on board. This is real authority. A colonel is a big rank. So Mark Kelly retired as a captain. He flew, I believe, 39 combat missions in the A-6 Intruder, which is an attack jet in the first Gulf War in 1991. He then became a test pilot. He has significant time in over 50 different types of aircraft. A very experienced, very accomplished pilot. He then went on to become an astronaut. He was on 4 space shuttle missions, one of them as pilot and 2 of them as mission commander. This is not a lightweight person. This is not somebody that just came in off the streets and doesn't know what they're doing. This is somebody that has real experience, real accomplishments, 2 distinguished flying crosses with Valor devices in his medal rack. This is a serious person. So anybody military reading this ribbon rack with the rank and the medals would like, yeah, this is one of the guys, right? So he is now a senator. And what he clearly stated, and hopefully what I had illustrated about the UCMJ and the different commands of Congress and illegal orders, Congress, judicial branch, and the president all share authority. So the senator, Mark Kelly, has real authority over the military. And he is stating legally factual statements that, like I said, started for me all the way in basic training. You know, I was just barely in the military. I might have been issued my first uniform, maybe. I don't remember. It was really early in basic training because even in basic training, you have sergeants, your drill sergeants, in authority over you. And if they give you an illegal order, you have to refuse it. Does that make sense? So it's very, very early in training. And then it's repeated. Every time you spin up for a deployment, you have to get similar training. If you receive an illegal order, it's a problem. When you get trained for a job, whether it's internet information technology, so you're an IT person, you're cyber war, you're infantry, you're a supply logistics person, you're a maintainer on an aircraft. If somebody gives you an order to violate regulations or violate a law, you have to be trained on your specific job. So if you're an airplane mechanic on an F-16, you have all of these standing regulations to properly maintain this really expensive fighter jet, the real asset of the United States military and the United States taxpayers. And these regulations are there for a reason. So if somebody orders you to violate these regulations, it's a problem. So you need to know the regulations, the standing order. You need to be knowledgeable in your job enough to know what can and cannot be done legally. So this is standard for the military. I cannot emphasize how standard this is. Everybody in the military should know this. If they don't, they either forgot or they're really not a smart person, because this is training you get early and often and repeated and again and again and again and again and again over time. So yeah, it's a big deal. And the senator was stating something that was legally factual, and the president threatened him with execution. I can't emphasize how historically unprecedented that is. But the other part, when I was detailing who Mark Kelly is, he's not a guy that's going to take this. His statement of, I've had rockets explode outside my jet over Iraq. You don't scare me. I've been through a lot worse than you. So yeah, he's not going to sit down and take that.
Yeah, interesting to see him on Jimmy Kimmel being
I
interviewed.
haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, he actually talked about being shot down.
So on the
explode.
on the plus side of this is Mark Kelly was considered a presidential contender in 24 when they were trying to decide if there were going to be primaries or not before Biden decided to run again. He was in the top 3 choices for Kamala Harris's vice presidential choice. It was Mark Kelly, Waltz from Minnesota, and Shapiro from Pennsylvania. Those were the top 3. And in now with this huge spotlight and veterans like me going, are you kidding me? And I'm really holding back my language right now, because if you were in the military and this kind of BS went down, there would be harsh words. We would be nose to nose and there would be screaming going on. That's how serious this is. So one of the side effects of this, though, is this, I believe, just immediately catapulted Mark Kelly to the front runner for the Democratic nomination in 28.
And on the opposite side of the political aisle, we find Steve Bannon, who I think this is today on his
is a little Jabba the Hutt kind of a guy,
who calls for Kelly to be recalled to active service so he can be court-martialed.
So this isn't going to fly.
Kelly's got to be recalled. We don't need to wait to 10 December, Pete. It's pretty obvious what he did. Just recall him to active duty and let's convene a court-martial. Let's roll. Let's show these guys that we're serious about this. You don't need to the 10th. It's way too long. Just do it today. Do it today. We don't need the Secretary of Navy involved. The Secretary of War should just do it. Convene a court, recall him to active duty today, and convene a court-martial that, I don't know, sits on Monday. We got to stop messing around.
Yeah, that's not going to. That's not going to fly. Oh, he actually was in the military. I didn't think Steve Bannon was in the military, but he was a lieutenant in the Navy. That would have been officer grade 3, a very, very junior officer. And if he was in 76 through 83, yeah, if he only made 03 in 7 years, that might be why he got out. Because he should have been at least 04 at that point.
I can't think of anything in my lifetime in U.S. politics that mirrors this at all.
So the other thing is Steve Bannon is completely outside of the law right here, because no matter what happens, whether somebody's even accused or not, the accused have rights, even under the UCMJ. This convene a court martial on Monday is not going to fly. The only time that's going to happen, honestly, it wouldn't even happen in some of the more dire situations. So cowardice during wartime in the face of the enemy is one of the most serious charges that any military person can face. Even that would not have that kind of fast court-martial that Steve Bannon's calling for. So that's not going to fly. The defendant has rights, and that kind of a hasty court-martial would grossly violate the defendant's rights, and it wouldn't stand. And did I mention that the judicial branch has ultimate authority over courts martial, not the military, not the president?
How is this affecting the country, the mood? Is it deepening the divisions? It has to be.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's also turning heads, because you don't look at a retired captain, astronaut, combat veteran, commander of 2 space shuttle missions and flew on 4, and sitting senator. This is not your average person on the street. This is quite an accomplished individual that knows what he's talking about. So when somebody sees somebody like this attacked by the president and all of the legal authority that the office of the president has, it's turning some heads. There's been some pushback in some of the military folks that I've seen and heard from directly, as well as other, word on the street, rumors kind of stuff, that the military has never been a huge fan of Trump. He acts and walks tough, but, bone spurs, he got all those deferments rather than serving. His children were prime age for service after 9/11. None of them served. His youngest son right now is a prime military age. He doesn't appear to be serving. Nobody in Trump's family has served going way back, This is not a military family. And in fact, they actively avoided military service when their nation could have used them. So the military already had a complicated relationship with Trump. And this kind of a thing, if you remember the McCarthy years, when McCarthy tried to go after, I can't remember the name of the Army general that was in front of his committee. And somebody says, at long last, have you no shame, kind of a thing. The going after the military was what finally did in McCarthy. So we'll see. I've been hearing a lot of this guy is not okay. This is not good.
It seems like Bannon, maybe Trump too. It feels like they're serious about this. Trump, during Trump 1.0 and the election against Hillary, you kept hearing lock her up, lock her up. It always seemed hyperbolic, and it was kind of like, this is not really going to happen. It's politics.
But now he is actually going after people legally. Yeah. He went after Comey over 2016 in part. He went because the thing that Comey was accused of happened in 2020, but it was a statement in Congress to Congress about events that this is complicated, and hopefully I stated correctly. So this is where I don't know. So grain of salt. But it was over a previous testimony that he gave to Congress. And I believe the previous testimony happened either in 17 or 18 over the 2016 events that had to do with the investigation of Hillary Clinton, I believe.
And, I think that Bannon's serious because he spent some time in jail. So to him, this is like, and there have been speeches that he has given since Trump was elected, and even before during the campaign, where he was like, when we get in there, I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, you're on notice. We are coming for you, and there will be people held to account. And you hear that within the MAGA movement all the time, the freedom movement in Canada too. Hold them accountable, lock them up. And Bannon seems pretty serious about it. I think he was really pissed when he went to jail. You could really see it. And now it's coming back, right? I get it, but it's dangerous.
Oh man, he had domestic violence charges in 96.
I didn't know that.
He had the money laundering and federal fraud charges related to building the wall in Mexico.
That's right. Yeah.
And he should have gone to jail for that.
I think Trump pardoned him on that.
He did. And the only thing he served time for was contempt of Congress conviction. And I don't remember what that was over. Yeah. But he was also up to his neck in, people might not remember this because it was 10 years ago, but in the 2016 campaign, there seems to be no evidence that the Trump campaign, or at least Trump himself, explicitly sought help from Russia. But there is ample evidence that when help from Russia came, they willingly accepted it and just ran with it. It also doesn't help that his Trump's campaign manager, I believe starting in August of 2016, didn't last long because details came out and he got fired. But Paul Manafort was a known Russian agent. He's an American that had been working for the Russians and was on their payroll. And the FBI, which in the United States, one of the FBI's core missions is counter-espionage. The CIA is not legally authorized to operate inside the United States. The FBI's job is to do that. The CIA operates overseas. The FBI operates inside the United States. The Paul Manafort had been on the FBI's list of Russian agents for a long time because it wasn't a new thing. So Steve Bannon was up to his neck in all of that kind of stuff. So when you see Steve Bannon, he might not be the classy, ethical, upstanding citizen that some people might think he is.
Yeah, and Manafort was placed under arrest, convicted on what I can't remember the exact charges, but spent a lot of time under house arrest. I'm not sure what his status is now. I know he was wearing an anklet.
He was trying to redeem himself because he's up to his neck in debt to various Russian oligarchs. And that didn't go away because he went to prison in the United States. So I believe he was trying to make some money to, settle his debts.
Yeah. And the other strange thing that a lot of people, very few people have really keyed in on this, but I think it's important, is Bannon's involvement going to bat for or defending in public that billionaire. What's his name? Miles Guo. Are you familiar with all of that?
I don't remember any of this. I just know it's like one scheme after another.
He's an exiled billionaire. Left China in 2015. There were allegations of corruption.
I vaguely remember this now.
Yeah. And see, this all ties into what's the organization? He's part of a group in the United States that is dedicated to overthrowing the Chinese government. And
that billionaire,
Bannon and Guo are directly involved with that. I can't remember the name of.
I can't.
But he goes there. I think they're based in New York, and I've seen Bannon go there to give speeches to this. It's the new federal state of China is what it's called. It's
Guo
sort of
Wengyu, maybe.
What's that?
Guo Wengyu.
Yeah, he has several names that he uses. Miles Guo is the one that Bannon generally uses in public and when he's making statements about him, but he goes by Ho Wan Kwok and Guo Wengyu, as well. So he's got like three names, billionaire, and then they've created, it's sort of like this external political party, a party in waiting of some weird thing, but it seems to be based in the United States, but it's like an opposition to the Chinese Communist Party.
It sounds like there's echoes of, if you remember back in like 02 and 03, there was that exiled Iraqi that was trying to feed the Bush administration stories about WMD and all that.
Right.
I can't remember his name, but he was part of a Iraqi government in waiting, like, go conquer Iraq and we'll take over Iraq. And turns out he was not somebody you wanted in charge of anything.
Yeah, so this is stuff that's sort of happening with Bannon in the background, not in secret. It is public, but few people are really aware of it.
Yeah.
But when you start looking at his involvement with this new Federal Republic of China, or whatever the group is called, the politics in that, the billionaire, they have also a cryptocurrency that they created.
Of course they do.
Yeah, and so that generated a bunch of money, and then there was the wall thing. It's like, it seems kind of dirty and shady. And
it's one scheme after another. Yeah.
but it's also having an impact on the U.S. relationship with China.
Mhm.
And I think it complicates things a lot,
Yes.
and I think it's influencing Trump and the people around him as well.
Yeah, because Bannon regained some of his influence in Trump circles. I don't remember where that currently stands. He's not somebody that I focus on a lot.
Yeah. So anyway, very complicated guy, Steve Bannon, but I think he follows the money too, and
Oh yeah.
he's getting money, I think, from people like the
Well, that
billionaire.
was the whole fraud over building the wall. He's like, oh yeah, there's all sorts of crazy people and very dedicated people and people that feel really strongly about this immigration issue that really want to build this wall, and they'll
Yeah.
give me money if I ask them. And that's basically what it was. Like, yeah, I'll take your money.
Yeah, and I remember Trump saying that he wasn't comfortable with it, didn't come right out and condemn it. He knew it was going on, but he's sort of pushed Bannon to the outside. And for a while, too, he was calling him sloppy Steve Bannon. They had a bit of a falling out, but
Yeah, of
Bannon's
course they
smart
did.
enough to know that, he needs to stay somewhat in Trump's good graces. And it's a good thing he did because he got the pardon. If he hadn't, he'd probably be rotting in jail right
Yeah.
now. Yeah. Very complicated, everything around him, because he's also tied into Russia, and
Yeah.
and he's spent time hanging out with Alexander Dugin, and he subscribes to the same, really the same political ideology. He's embraced that, and that world policy essentially that Dugin has integrated into Russian foreign policy and objectives. So yeah, wow. You can see why we have what we have with the Ukraine peace deal after
Well, and
all of
you can
that.
also see how far-reaching Russian attempts have been the last 20 years. At least going back to Putin's 2007 speech and probably before that, because obviously that 2007 Munich speech didn't come out of the nothing. He had been thinking about that for a while, and in some ways, that was Putin's declaration of war on the West, and it started up before that.
So what I'll get your initial thoughts on this the Ukraine peace talks. First, a 28-point plan or proposal that we were told came from, I think, the State Department, but there were allegations it's sort of just a Russian plan that's being delivered. And now it's been revised down to a 19-point plan. I don't think we have all the details on it, but
Yeah, so fast moving, there's a lot of I don't knows, and tomorrow's the story is going to be a little different at least. There's all sorts of allegations flying. There was people that linguistic experts that demonstrated that the 28-point plan had been was not written by a native English speaker, that it showed signs of being translated mechanically, Google Translate, out of Russian. And there's one of the Russian officials saying, yeah, that 28-point plan is what we had last summer, and it's what we brought to the August meeting in Alaska between Putin and Trump. So this wasn't even anything new. I strongly suspect that this was leaked either by Russia or somebody in the Trump administration that's heavily pro-Russia. There was also something that was going on because I believe Witkoff, who was the special envoy, if I got that name right, Steve Witkoff, he was very much pro-Russia. There's the things where it's come out that he's been coaching Russia on how to appeal to Trump. So Witkoff might be one of the people that's been, making Trump bounce back and forth between pro-Russia and maybe being stronger on Russia. But he had been doing a lot of things behind the back of the State Department, which supposedly is in charge of foreign policy. And there were negotiations going on, and Rubio flew in later, like a couple of days into it, and took over. And Rubio is definitely not on the Russian side of this. And so that's when things started to change, and some of the worst let's reward Russia for being awful and committing war crimes, and some of those went away. So we'll see what actually comes out of it. A lot of things changed pre-2022 if I have my numbers right, this is one of the points. The Ukrainian army had been about 250 to 350,000 people. They're currently between 800,000 and a million. This obviously varies depending on recruitment and what's happening on the front line. And there's all sorts of things where you're not going to get an exact number. The number is going to vary minute to minute in some cases. And so one of the points is, if they do have a ceasefire in place working towards a peace plan, the Ukrainian military might be capped at 800,000, but that's still a significant force. So that's something that Ukraine could probably deal with, because it's already more than twice, almost 3 times as big as their pre-2022 army. So that it's a serious force. The previous cap in the old 28-point plan that doesn't exist anymore, I believe, was either 500 or 600,000. I saw different reports, and obviously we don't necessarily have that original document. So that's one of the things that has been altered. Russia getting rewarded with reconstruction money, that's off the table. All of the things in this peace plan that we're talking about, relations between the United States and Russia, so the relief of sanctions or any sort of partnerships, trade partnerships, are completely outside of this document. But we'll see how far this goes. Zelensky has been smart on this one. He never came out too strongly, because if he had used the wrong harsh words, if he had spoken hastily, it could have had the complete opposite effect of what he wanted. It could have entrenched Trump in a heavily pro-Russian document, and Zelensky didn't do that. So Zelensky's following what he's been following for a solid year now, because Trump was elected more than a year ago, of playing to Trump's vanity and need for praise and all that kind of stuff. And also putting forth a position where Ukraine is working for peace, but he is putting the Russians in a situation where either Russia accepts something that isn't, all of these maximal, we want everything that Russia has been pushing, including, like, we want victories that our army couldn't take on the ground, and we want the line pushed back. That was part of the original 28-point plan. Obviously an absurd request, but Ukraine has been pro ceasefire in place, and they've been publicly advocating the idea that Ukraine wants peace, which they do, but they don't want a peace that isn't going to work. Ukraine's seen this before. The 1994 Budapest Memorandum, the 1997 Treaty of Friendship, the UN Charter, the final, I'd like to say it was the Helsinki Agreement in 1975, but I might have gotten that name wrong. And then the 2014 and 2015 Minsk Accords. All of these were, Ukraine saw Russia put things out that Russia demanded more, and then they wanted even more, so then they went ahead and broke the agreement. So there's this long history going back decades of Russia breaking these agreements. And so Ukraine is playing this smart and looking for what they call a just peace. And if Russia accedes to it, that's fine, because it looks like it was either yesterday or the day before Russia started selling physical gold reserves. Does that make sense? Somebody can actually go buy gold out of the Russian treasury. And Russia, before the last couple of days, had I believe, the 5th largest gold reserve on the planet. And this is the last straw for their economy. So Ukraine took away their cash crop. First, they took away the Russian military sales, because Russian military gear wasn't working. And then this year, and especially since August, they've taken down Russia's oil refining capacity, causing gasoline shortages in the entire nation, ban on gasoline exports, all sorts of chaos in Russia's industry right now. Russia's out of tanks. One of their tank factories is technically still working, but they, instead of like in an American wartime situation, we'd have a factory doing 3 shifts 24 hours a day. So you've got workers doing 8-hour shift, and then the next shift comes on. It just keeps cranking. These Russian arms factories have not only never gone to 24-hour days, now they went down to 4 days, and those 4 days are only 2 to 6 hours per day. So technically they're still open, but they were, because they don't have the materials. They don't have the old tanks to refurbish. They don't have the steel. They don't have the power. The Russian economy is in serious trouble. So it is possible that this is the point where Russia actually starts to come to the table, but I don't actually see it yet. Putin has too much to lose. But he might be fearful that this might be, because the one thing that Putin probably fears is that his own people will rise up against him. And it's getting to the point where that's looking like a distinct possibility.
When I look at the headlines on the Russian side, there's nothing positive being said about these talks.
There was the first day when it was the 28-point plan that was a Russian plan to begin with. The Russian state media was all over it.
Here, I'll bring up RT to just take a look tonight. But it just suggests to me that this whole thing is dead on arrival, because, and even before arrival, because it doesn't look to me like on the Russian side there's any positive momentum that way. It's just
well, what Russia's been doing this entire time was making demands that Ukraine's never going to be able to take, because a lot of the demands Russia was putting out there would violate Ukraine's constitution. Mm-hmm. And Zelensky can't do that. If they amend the constitution, maybe, but Zelensky can't currently do that and still, be president. He can't. The country would fall because he would break the constitution. So that's obviously not going to fly.
Yeah, I just don't see anything there that's like, oh, a peace deal is at hand. We're really close. The war could be coming to an end very quickly. None of that kind of positive spin on it. It's still all very negative.
Was that RT from today?
I just went to the website.
Yes, today. Yeah, all the stuff I was talking about was from last week when we still had the original 28-point plan. So
no, I understood that. Yeah,
this is what it looks like after Zelensky was smart and Rubio flew in to take over the negotiations. So the weird thing was, you got Witkoff, who is looking increasingly like he's on Russia's side. He's Russia's envoy, not Trump's. But we also had a really weird move where is Driscoll is his name? He's the Secretary of the Army, and he was somebody I'd never heard of before.
Yeah, sort of a rising star on the
Dan Driscoll. I can't remember his name, but he's one of JD Vance's friends. And I'm just trying to figure out, why on earth is the Secretary of the Army? This is not even remotely his job. Why is he involved in the negotiations? Like, this makes exactly no sense. So maybe he was there and they set up how does the U.S. Army learn from Ukraine's army? Because that's been a big push lately. Maybe that's why he was there and it just happened to coincide. There's going to be a lot of why on earth did this happen going on by people studying this in the years to come.
Yeah. So the question I have is, what's driving this? Because it surprised me to see this happen to begin with at this time. Is this Trump in a rush to meet a deadline for the next Nobel Peace Prize nomination? Is it just that he's trying to put a win up on the scoreboard? Was this initiated by Russia to see what they could get because they're in trouble in some way, either Putin politically or the Russian economy? What's driving this particular round of talks?
And that's one of the unanswered questions. So it would depend heavily on who actually leaked that initial 28-point plan, which is why the translation thing comes into play. Because was it the actual Russians that or, even if it was through Witkoff, if the Russians had thrown something through Google Translate, printed it out and given it to Witkoff, and it'd depend a lot on how that was initiated. I do know that the Russian economy is in the toilet, so maybe Russia is starting to reach out. They're having problems with recruiting too. It's kind of an issue. It could be Trump because he's had a lot of losses lately. Between Lindsey Halligan, and Lindsey Halligan was not even the first supposed U.S. attorney that was ruled by a court to be illegally appointed, and was never, in fact, a U.S. attorney at all. And so all of the work they did supposedly under the authority of a U.S. attorney was null and void. Yeah. She was the third one. So there's been all sorts of legal setbacks and rulings against him. And like I said, between the Los Angeles guard deployment and the DC guard deployment, those are two that were ruled illegal. Is it the Epstein files that was causing a big problem? I mean, Trump is going, or not the midterms, the off-year elections where Trump lost 10 out of 10 elections. Yeah. There's a lot of losses stacking up against Trump right now. So he might be just trying to get traction. And this is one of the things that he campaigned on, and he's been getting a lot of flack because he said, this is easy to end. I could end that on day one, was one of the things that he said. And now he's almost a year in, and there doesn't seem to be any progress on it. I could have told you that because this is not something that President Trump anyway could end. Maybe a stronger president if Mark Kelly had been president, because he wouldn't have been fooling around. I dug a little bit more into the Budapest memorandum from 1994. And in that memorandum, the United Kingdom, Russia, and the United States, all three nations, gave Ukraine security guarantees. If there was an invasion, if somebody invaded Ukraine, then we would come to their aid. Under international law, the United States could have declared war on Russia based on the 1994 Budapest memorandum. It's right there. And so the seriousness of what a U.S. president could do, we haven't quite reached yet. But with Trump in power, it just went queer fast. But I don't think Trump's the guy to end it.
Yeah, it's just it just perplexes me. I don't really see. It just seems like I just get. It's like Trump doesn't care what the deal looks like in the end, because it's like, I don't care. Just get me a win. Get me a piece
of it as a victory. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can say that I got it, that I did it.
He's a victor in his own mind, kind of a thing.
Yeah. But neither side, Ukraine is being very diplomatic and smart about it. I think when you look at what Zelensky came back with, they were calling for limiting the size of the army to about 600,000. He came back. Now it's at 800,000,
which is still less than what they have. So, okay. Yeah. Some of your people can go home, and you can recruit some healthier people to take some of the people's places that are just tired right now.
And in the new 19-point plan, they say, NATO is out of the equation, but if you read down, it still has security guarantees written in. So there's that. But I don't think Russia on the other side will accept that. So it's gone from the 28-point plan that's very pro-Russia to this 19-point plan that is more in line with what I think Ukraine might be able to live with, which I'm sure they don't want. But they're saying that even the language that Zelensky used was smart, because I think he said that he's in support of the essence of the deal. Not, they didn't go further than that. So,
well, it goes back to the thing that if Ukraine quits fighting, there is no more Ukraine. If Russia quits fighting, then the war ends. And so that's been the situation since the start. Ukraine wanted no part of this war. They wanted to be a free, independent country. And that's still the case. They don't want to invade Russia. They don't want to conquer Russia. They just want this to end. So if it can end, and Ukraine is free and secure, obviously that's something Zelensky would be in favor of, because he has been from the start. But yeah, there's a lot of things in that original 28-point plan that would not have ended with a free and independent Ukraine. Ukraine would have looked a lot more like Belarus, because that's actually the Russian goal.
And this is where I think Vladimir Putin overplayed his hand. He is now facing a new kind of war as of this year, where you're seeing now direct attacks inside Russia against infrastructure, oil refineries, which he didn't have before. And I remember the first time a Ukrainian drone showed up above the Kremlin and it was shot down, everybody freaked out. It was like, oh my God, it's going to be World War III. But since then, because Ukraine is able to act more independently and right.
They had their innovation cycle, the FP1, the Neptune, the longer range Neptunes, the Flamingos, something that doesn't get a lot of plays called the Trombita. The Ukrainian innovation cycle of domestically produced weapons that not only have long range, because the FP1s have long range, but they have small warheads. And they're also slow. Ukraine now has larger, faster, with heavier payload weapons that can reach deep inside of Russia. And these are all Ukrainian innovation. And it just spun and spun and spun until finally in 2025, they can do some real damage to Russia, like we've seen.
Some people in the chat over on Rumble, which you can't see, asking if you are still active military.
I am not. I am retired. If I was active duty military, I could not remotely say some of the things that I have said tonight. Because if I had, God forbid, if I had appeared in uniform, that would have been real bad. But even if I was active duty, there are rules, because the American military has rules about partisan activity for active duty members, especially active duty members in uniform. But since I had identified, and you can see my shadow box behind me, I'm obviously identifying myself, at least in part, with the United States military. There are rules about the American military acting in a partisan political manner. And there's a good reason for that, because the military has to honestly, ethically, and vigorously serve governments of both parties. And my personal military service was from 2001 through 2023. And if you do the math there, I served under President George Bush, number 43. I served under Obama. I served under Trump V1, and I served under Joe Biden. So I served 4 presidents, 2 from each party, and I served all 4 of them to the utmost of my ability. And that is the tradition in the United States military, is whoever gets elected, that's who you serve. And that's why there are rules. I could not appear on stage at a partisan political event in uniform. And there's been a couple of instances where that's been a problem, where people kind of got smacked down for it. And if I was active duty, I'd have to really watch what I say, because there are rules.
Can you help us make sense of what is going on with Venezuela?
Well, I can try, because I don't fully understand it yet either.
Again, it's I think I know what it is, but who cares what I think?
So this goes even back to the illegal orders, and this is the strikes, the kinetic strikes. That's military speak for you just blew something up. The kinetic strikes on the small fast boats in the Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. I'll call it Gulf of Mexico. It's fine. And now I recently saw that there was one in the Eastern Pacific. I don't know precisely where, but it's not just over south of Florida anymore. Mm-hmm. But there's been a leaked, it was either Pentagon or a White House memo that came out that basically said that we declare these are legal targets because the president said they're legal targets, which means that they have exactly 0 legal basis. The president can, I suppose, but Trump has been trying to define himself into legality like I state this and therefore it's okay. It's kind of the Nixon phrase where if the president does it, it can't be illegal. And we saw where that got Nixon. So there have been active duty military members, some with very high rank, and we'll go into that in a second, who have been challenging these orders through official channels, because even with the recent Supreme Court rulings that the U.S. president, the sitting U.S. president, has a certain level of immunity if he's executing the authority of the office, the people that are following his orders do not have that immunity. And that's why I got into you are legally obligated to not obey illegal orders. So one of the reasons for that, and one of the reasons that's communicated to U.S. military members, is if the president orders you to bomb a boat, to blow up a boat that has human beings in it, those human beings die. Turns out they were not a lawful target. And there's a question about whether they're a lawful target or not. But we have not confirmed that there's drugs in the boat. Trump's supposed legal rationale is that he's preventing fentanyl overdoses, but out of Venezuela is not where the fentanyl is coming from, so that doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of things going on that the person that actually pulls the trigger and releases the weapon, I'm not entirely sure these are bombs. They might be Hellfire missiles. They might be different things. I'm not sure what they're using. But the person that actually pulls the trigger, releases the kinetic weapon, blows up the boat, and kills people. If this was an illegal order, that person that pulled the trigger is now under threat of murder charges and a war crime for deliberately targeting and killing non-combatants. So this is one of the reasons why we are informed to not obey legal orders, because the person above you might be giving you an illegal order, but if you actually pull the trigger, you're the one that committed the crime. So there have been the JAG, and you remember I said that 06, captain in the Navy, colonel in other branches, is a serious rank. The top-ranking JAG, the top-ranking military lawyer in what the United States calls Southern Command, which covers basically everything south of Florida and basically Western Hemisphere. So Central and South America is Southern Command. The head lawyer was a Marine colonel, same rank as Senator Kelly retired as, and he openly questioned these orders. He stated they were illegal. The commander of Southern Command, which is a 4-star, I can't remember if it's general or an admiral right now, is resigning after, this is normally a 3-year position. He has served only 1 year and he's resigning. And we'll see what, he can't probably say anything while he's still serving in active duty, but once he retires, he might say something. So there's been some real problems going on with this. That's just the boat thing. I don't know if you wanted to get into the rest of it, but this is one of the things that prompted Senator Kelly to say what he said.
Yeah, because we have a quarter or a third maybe of the U.S. Navy off the coast of Venezuela.
It's not that the U.S. Navy is a big fleet. But
so that's misinformation that I'm reading on that. Then
where did you get that from?
I'm seeing it online, like 30%, but these are social media posts, not necessarily mainstream and you got credible reports.
You know, what did they say about lies and statistics? So how did they compute that percentage?
Right. Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to get to a third. So for instance, the United States has 11 aircraft carriers. There's 10 Nimitz class and 1 Ford class. One of the Nimitz classes is about to retire and another Ford class is about to come online. So we have 11 carriers. However, 11 carriers does not give you 11 carriers. And I'll explain what I mean by that. 11 carriers means that you have 3 at sea at any given time. You have 3 that just returned from sea. Their sailors are getting some rest. The ship is getting some maintenance. They're doing some fixing things. Maybe they have to fix some pipes, or they have to install a new radar, or whatever maintenance the ship needs after being at sea for 6 to 9 months. Repainting, some of the hull plating might have been corroded, and there's all sorts of things. So you've got the 3 carriers that had been sea that are doing that. The crew's getting rest, the ship is getting repaired or possibly modernized. Now, after those 3 ships finish getting repaired and or modernized, and the crew is now rested, you now have those 3 would be then spinning back up for their next deployment. So you would have to make sure that all of those repairs to the ship were done properly, that the repair actually works. You don't have a new leak. If you replaced a piece of hull plating, you actually need to make sure there's no leaks there, right? The piece of plumbing works, that radar actually works, that kind of a thing. So they would be spinning up with post-overhaul sea trials. The air wing would have new pilots, new flight deck crew, the new maintainers that would have to get trained because they've never deployed before because other people retired or they got moved to another position. So you've got new people that need new training. So you've got 3 carriers at sea, you've got 3 carriers that are returning, getting repaired, and you've got 3 carriers that are spinning up for the next deployment. That leaves you 2 extra carriers to get to 11, and those carriers are going to be in long-term overhauls. So there's something called refueling and complex overhaul, RCOH. That would be the ships are designed, all of our carriers are nuclear powered. The nuclear plants have a 25-year life, and after 25 years, you have to refuel them because the carriers are designed to last 50 years, but with 25 years on the fuel, you got to refuel them once. But that also gives you the opportunity at 25 years, if you got to refuel it anyway, that's some serious work. You got to cut through things and take things out. It's serious work. As long as you're doing that, you do an overhaul of the entire ship. And so when it completes its RCOH, it's basically a new ship. And so you got 2 carriers doing that kind of maintenance. So that's why I say 11 carriers means you only have 3 carriers. So what they might be talking about with a third is we have the Nimitz, which I believe is in the Pacific off of China. You've got, I don't remember what the third carrier, but you've got probably one off of Southwest Asia. So that is watching Iran and Pakistan and Afghanistan and the Houthis in Yemen and all those people. And the Ford, which had been off of Europe, but is now off of Venezuela. So their third might have been, we have 3 carriers at sea. So that might have been a third of what we have at sea right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, here's one of the posts using that number. This is Jim Ferguson. I don't know if you're familiar with him or what he is about. He is involved, and I think he heads up this international political group, activist group, sort of, some would say right wing, Freedom Train International. Say major.
Well, with that name, that sounds like that. And it's a Fox News line there, so that sounds.
Yeah, and Ferguson's actually out of the UK, but gets involved in a lot of MAGA politics.
Now,
but he's international, and
even me with
here of all deployed, he says.
Of all deployed, so yeah, he even qualified it. So now, with all of my qualifications saying no, that's not 30% of the fleet. A third of the at-sea fleet is some serious business. Last time I was there, I mentioned that the Ford aircraft carrier is going to have between 2 and 4 Burke destroyers and at least 1 Ticonderoga class cruiser. Between those 3 to 5 escort ships, you're going to have a couple of hundred vertical launch cells for missiles. That means that you're probably going to have between 20 and 50 at least that are fitted out for Tomahawks. You might have a guided missile cruiser, a converted Ohio class. Those have 150 Tomahawks that they normally carry. You're going to have an attack submarine. Anytime we have an aircraft carrier anywhere, there is an attack submarine, either improved Los Angeles or Virginia or Seawolf class, that is unseen, underwater, submerged, watching out for enemy submarines. Any of those also have another dozen Tomahawks and vertical launch cells. So you've got some serious hitting power just in the carrier strike group right there. We also have two what they call MEUs, MEU, that's a Marine Expeditionary Unit. Those are based out off of, they might look like an aircraft carrier to the untrained eye, but they're amphibious ships with a the flat top, an aviation deck that operates helicopters or the tilt rotors. And they had been operating Harriers, and now they operate F-35Bs, the Stovall short takeoff vertical landing version of the F-35. And each one of those is going to have 6 to 10 F-35s on them, 4,000 Marines, and they're going to have their own Burke destroyers. So yet more missile vertical launch cells for Tomahawks. There's some serious hitting power because we haven't even gotten to the Air Force assets that are in the region. Various bases in Puerto Rico and Florida especially I've been to. There's some serious firepower. All of our B-52s, for instance, are based out of Barksdale, which is in Louisiana, right on the Gulf Coast. So there's some serious hitting power in the region, even if I am going to quibble about, no, that wasn't really a third of our fleet. This amount of hitting power in right off of Venezuela is serious business.
So what does this tell us? Is there an invasion imminent? Because
so is it Trump saber rattling? Is it Trump just trying to look like a tough guy and he's wasting all these military people's time? Is it Trump being a tough guy and diverting American assets that should actually be somewhere else? For instance, is the Ford aircraft there? We don't currently have an aircraft carrier watching Europe, which means that if Europe goes sideways and Russia starts being really stupid, we no longer have a carrier air wing able to do what they do in the region. So diverting an aircraft carrier is kind of a serious business. If it was anyone other than Trump, then I would say that they actually did mean business. But with Trump, it could just be a vanity project. He's just wasting all of our time. That being said, the military is actually doing its job, because what I said about the person that actually pulls the trigger, the person that's on the business end, or if you really want to get buzzwordy, the sharp end of the spear, that's serious military buzzwords. But these people know that if things go sideways, if stuff starts blowing up, the person that's most likely to suffer from this are the military people. So we take this seriously. I sent you an article yesterday or today, I can't remember, about the it's a modified 707. Yeah. I'd like to say this specific version was a rivet joint, but there's a whole bunch of separate versions of these jets. They're all ISR jets, which we call intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, and they all have different gear aboard that helps them do what they do. This specific jet is the type that sniffs out and studies and analyzes enemy electromagnetic signals. So their communications, their radars, the RC-135, that's usually called rivet joint. And if you go down, you can see all the antennas and those chin bulges. Those are side-looking radars. And you can see the fat jets. This one's been modernized with better engines, and probably the wings were replaced. It's a very effective jet. You can see the elongated nose. It's got a serious front-looking radar on it. And all of those antennas are going to be sniffing out. One thing you probably don't see here is that it trails a lot of things. It's got things on cables that it drags behind it that gets you away from the jet and the big metal piece of metal and spinning metal in the engines that could interfere with intercepting. So it's got sniffers, on a cable a kilometer behind the jet that is also sniffing things out. So what this is a prelude to any sort of aerial attack, especially. So if you hear, God, I'm really buzzwording tonight, I'm sorry, but if the American military decides to kick in the door, we have to know where the door is to kick, So this is the type of jet that tells you where the doors are. and it tells you what type of door leads to what type of thing. So in the earlier this year, when the B-2s bombed the Iranian nuclear sites, this jet would have sniffed out all of the Iranian air defenses. And it came out just today or yesterday that an F-35A, or a bunch of them really, had followed through and actually kicked in the door. So the F-35 is fulfilling its design, inherent design, like this is what it's best at, is what the Air Force calls SEED or DEED. People might have heard it called Wild Weasel, that dates back to the Vietnam era. SEED and DEED is either suppression or destruction of enemy air defenses. And the F-35 is a thoroughbred, born and bred to do that kind of a thing. So that is the door kicker.
Well, it was supposed to be drugs, but then this week we saw reports from Fox News saying that Trump won't invade Venezuela because of the drugs. He's going to do it because he needs to make sure that he pushes China, Russia, and India out of the region.
Which, this is not the way you do it. I mentioned before, it's not like Venezuela's it's not like their government's great. They're awful. And their people don't like them. But the Americans coming in and taking them out is not the best choice. It's one of those things that might create more enemies than you had to start with.
Yes.
And so I can't imagine this being a positive effect.
That's exactly what's happening, because you're seeing, the president of Colombia expressing concern.
I believe, if I remember correctly, the president of Colombia denied military overflights or military basing. He had probably been requested to have either overflight rights, or we could land at one of the bases and refuel and then go in from a different direction.
Yeah.
And anytime we do anything like that, I'm sure, because like I said, the military actually care about, if we have to do this, I want to be able to go home to my wife when this is all done. And so they want to do it the right way, which means coming from as many directions as possible. So I would assume that we had asked Colombia, and I believe I read that Colombia said no, which is big because Colombia is one of our major allies in the region.
Yeah. Normally you would make your goals clear. We want to bring democracy to this country, something.
As our conversation has stated, what is Trump doing? What are his actual goals? Yeah. And if you're somebody in the military and you see this sort of chaos above you, you're like, what is going on? What are they asking? Why am I even here? You feel like, not for the pop culture reference, but the guy that Bill Paxton's character in the movie Aliens, the second Alien movie. I don't know if you remember that, but he's always mouthing off. But that's like standard military. Like, what am I doing here? Why? And it's important, because if you raise your right hand, I solemnly swear, affirm, all that kind of stuff. You put on the uniform, you literally you're risking your life by signing on the dotted line and raising your hand. You want that to be worth something. Yeah. Because if it's not, and you I'm not proud of that. There's a lot of people in the military that take that really seriously, and it's a matter of ethics and honor, and it's really intangible stuff. But military people take this seriously, because it's not like we get paid a whole ton of money to do what we do.
But you know what? I think the answer is right there in that post from Jim Ferguson, because he says the United States now has extraordinary military power positioned in the Caribbean, and this goes far beyond Venezuela.
He is right about that. The amount of power we have in the region is extraordinary.
He says this is not a symbolic deployment. This is a strategic message. While the world watches Venezuela, U.S. officials are openly acknowledging the real objective, pushing Russia, China, and Iran out of the Western Hemisphere. And This
Trump,
is a tectonic shift. For the first time in decades, the United States is preparing to confront the expanding influence of hostile powers in Latin America, including intelligence networks, military cooperation, cyber activity, cartel partnerships, and port access agreements that have quietly grown under Biden. And this
yeah,
has massive implications: food
they keep
security, energy
trying to
security.
they keep trying to blame Biden, but this goes back a long time before Biden.
Yeah. What he's getting at here is that this is carving up the world into spheres of influence and dominance, and the Western Hemisphere is America's. And Trump is saying, get out of here, China, Iran, Russia, um, and that's why he doesn't care that much about Ukraine. It does flow. It's all Duginism. It's this
A kind of revival of the old Monroe Doctrine, but at the same
yes,
time,
yes, it's integrated into that, but they can't state that publicly or for political reasons, because if Trump came out and started saying we're going to do this, I don't think the American public would really be that supportive, because
I
it's
think I saw a poll
disruptive.
that said something like 70 or even more than 70% of Americans opposed going into Venezuela because
Yeah.
why?
Yes.
We've got better things to do, kind of a thing.
Yep.
But the other part of this, though, is if Trump does this and it's not justified, so one of the things that America has going for it that we've worked really hard to do over the past 100 years is be the good guy. We haven't always done the right thing. We don't always wear the right hat, but we at least try, and every once in a while we succeed. But we always try to be the better choice. We try to be the person you want as your friend rather than the person that you just want to prevent from beating you up,
Yeah.
We don't want to be the coercive thug. We want to be your friend and ally, and if we go in for the wrong reasons or just chaotic reasons that they never can get their story straight, and then we make enemies in the region and it just makes everything worse, and especially if we don't do it right, because I mentioned that each one of those MUs might have 4,000 Marines, so 8,000 Marines, but 8,000 Marines is not enough to conquer a country. You could probably take it apart a little bit and cause some chaos, but that's causing chaos and destroying and blowing things up is not the same as being a competent military force and actually doing it right. To go into Venezuela right, you're probably talking 100 to 200,000 ground troops. That's doing it right, because then you can prevent the chaos. There's not going to be, you can control street looting. You can make sure that the water stays on, that children are safe. The hospitals can stay open because you have enough troops to secure them, all of that kind of stuff. 8,000 Marines is not enough to do that. So that's why I'm questioning whether he's actually trying to go in hot or not, unless he's got some fantasy about the Venezuelan opposition. But if you've got the oppressive force going in there for this long, the opposition forces inside of Venezuela don't exactly, all of their freedom muscles, for lack of a better term, are kind of atrophied. They're not actually used to acting like free people anymore that are in charge of their own destiny. And so I don't know that I would trust any political opposition inside of Venezuela to be competent. If you're going to take apart a country like Venezuela, you need to go in there and be the force for stability for 5 to 10 years before Venezuela could actually stand on its own once you destroy it. And so we're not talking about a simple operation here, and people in the military know that. So
This
if
whole
you're
thing, the drug thing, it's from the beginning, I've said it's just a pretext. This is a thing I got at the post office about tariffs, right? For
Of
Canada.
course.
So
although tariffs are in front of the Supreme Court, they might be going away.
Yeah, but like, so you have to
Because
go to this.
the authority for tariffs actually rests with the U.S. Congress. It's not a presidential authority.
Yeah.
So this is finally working its way through the courts.
I'll show you what comes up. So you go to this website. If you're going to send a package out,
Oh yeah,
right?
I've heard
But
about this because it's more than just tariffs. There's free nations like Canada, the US, the UK, France, Germany, Norway, all the usual first world suspects, have an agreement just on postal delivery where it's a certain free passage over borders for normal post, normal letters and packages and stuff like that.
yeah,
And that got taken away. And so there was a
yep,
lot of border crossing fees that just suddenly appeared. And it's
yeah.
not
So
a tariff, it's just, but it's like the first world started to break down kind of a thing.
it's just I can't get to the section. You have to fill this out, put your credit card number in. But I was there earlier today.
Oh, you don't
But
want to put your credit card in a number in live on your
I don't have a
podcast?
package
What's
to
wrong
ship
with
right
you?
now, so I don't want to
What's,
pay a tariff
what are
on
those
something I'm not
16
shipping.
digits again?
But it says right on the bottom, these are fentanyl tariffs. I'm like, so Canada is in the same category as Venezuela or, Mexico. Well, yeah, Mexico. We're a drug cartel nation now, and
Because when I
that's
think
what
of
justifies
Canada,
the tariffs,
yeah.
right? So that'll be, if that'll be an extra $20, please pay up front. Like, what
What
the
are
hell are you talking about?
the McKenzie brothers and Strange Brew are really cartel leaders?
Yeah, well, and then there's this whole information. I'll call it a propaganda campaign.
It is.
To
I would agree with you.
To build up this idea that Canada is this huge source of drugs flowing into the United States. I can easily debunk it, but
yeah. Well, and what I was saying before about the leaked legal rationale for bombing those boats is Trump is just declaring something is true. He's asserting something and saying, because I asserted it, it is true. If you didn't get dizzy on that argument, then you should probably, run that circle around a couple of times and then you'll be dizzy. But that's what he's trying to do, is he's trying to assert something and make it true because he asserted it.
It really makes me worry just a bit, because it's the same argument for all these countries is drugs. So then he can do whatever he wants. You're narco terrorists. I don't know, man. This is crazy foreign policy. That's all I can say. It's just nuts. Yes. Absolutely nuts.
So we'll see if any sort of rational people. I mean, Rubio is one of the very few people that's a voice for reason in the current Trump administration. He can only be so many places at once.
Yeah.
And right now he's trying to control the chaos on the Ukraine thing.
Yeah, but he's still a yes man.
He is in public, but he's been pushing back hard on the Ukraine stuff. But you're right. He also wants power, and he's willing to say yes to get it, at least in some ways.
Well, time will tell. Now, maybe you can help me with this a little bit. This is it's a bit off base, but it isn't off base. I posted a thumbnail for videos yesterday, I guess it was, and it was quoting Elon Musk. It just said, murderous thugs. And then after the program last night, I thought, that can be taken a lot of ways today. And some people could say, you're a racist, you're this, you're that, just because I posted that. It was meant to be a quote from Elon Musk. And I got it, but there's nuance to a lot of this stuff that most people are not aware of. And then I started to think about that word thug. And thug, because of Black culture, American culture, pop culture, thug culture, even now,
because thug life is
Thug Life, yeah. Tupac, right?
Yeah.
In the minds of, I would say, probably a lot of white people, especially conservatives,
they call it a dog whistle in the United States.
Yeah. So it would be viewed as you're a thug, you're a murderous Black person, right? And
What
then
was the context? Elon Musk throws out how many hundred tweets a day? I can't keep them straight.
but then, as I thought about it, I thought that's not really what I was getting at. And then you hear all this, this was related to the Chicago incident crime,
Oh yeah, that
the
people
woman
also
being
tried to
burned,
blow up into more than what it was. Yeah.
right? And so this woman burned, and it's really serious, and it's a horrific crime, no question. And I just said on the program the other day, it's pretty simple for me. If you commit an act of violence like
Violence.
that, doesn't matter what your skin color is, just it's a crime. It should be applied equally across the board.
Mhm.
That's the rule of law, and justice should be blind. Uh, and then I thought, but a lot of the people calling for even-handed justice and to make sure that there's not like a a double standard in the legal system in both Canada
Yeah.
and the United States. A lot of them actually don't want that. They really do want to. They do want prejudice
Yeah.
built into the system
So,
because
and I was going to touch a rail that I don't necessarily want to touch, but so I'm gonna back and go a little more generalized. So one of the in the United States, one of the right-wing talking points about crime is that I believe they're talking about, trying to remember the exact phrasing, something like 50% of violent crimes are committed by racial minorities. Which, when you remember me, earlier in this podcast, I said lies and statistics. Because what this did is it plucked one statistic out and made it into something that it wasn't, and trusted that the people didn't know what was going on. So that statistic was the number of people arrested for violent crimes, but we have a problem with selective legal enforcement. And we also have a problem with racial profiling, where you might be arrested for the crime that you had exactly nothing to do with. Because if it goes out, a black white male, and then the police arrest somebody for walking while black, then that goes into that statistic because they got arrested for a violent crime, even though they had nothing to do with it. So yeah, there is a problem with that, and some people don't actually understand or even recognize that it's a problem. But they'll start throwing statistics like that out there, and it is a real statistic that 50% of violent crime arrests are racial minorities, but that doesn't mean that is the difference in crime rate. It's a lot of other things.
Yeah, and I actually started to look up stats on, like, specific to how many people are burned like that in a crime, how many people are set on fire, and what's the
It's
racial
got to be
breakdown
really
like
rare.
that.
Yeah.
It's very rare, but it's very difficult to get accurate statistics on it.
Sure.
But from what I came across was unusual things. 70% of arsons apparently are committed by white people. That's what came up. It's unexpected stuff. But then I just, more as I thought about it too, because of that thumbnail that I put out, which I was like, that could be misinterpreted in so many ways. I thought, well, what does thug life mean? A lot of people would be like, you probably go to the default that it means like it's glorifying being a criminal, right? But that's not what Tupac meant by thug life. And he had that tattooed on his stomach. And it's not my kind of music, so I'd never paid that much attention to him. But, it means, I'm aware that it means, and I pulled this up from an article to make sure I got it right. I'll put it up on the screen. And it means sort of the opposite. It's like, excuse the foul language as a part of this. It says, thug life stands for the hate you give little infants fucks everybody. Well, that's a loaded comment, right? So what is that really referring to? It's referring to systemic racism. It's referring to, whether people have opportunity in life. It's
broken
referring
homes,
to all of these
domestic abuse,
issues.
all of it. Yeah.
And then they go on here, and he had the rap group called Thug Life, and then his stepfather co-wrote the Code of Thug Life, a code of conduct for gangs, which when you go and to look at that, it does sort of glorify gang life. But for Tupac, what thug life meant was it's actually, he says, I think even gangs can be positive. It just has to be organized. It has to steer away from being self-destructive to being self-productive.
Yeah.
I organized the OGs on the East Coast and the West Coast and the penitentiaries to come up with codes of ethics for criminals. It's called Code of Thug Life. It's a code to put order to the violence on the streets. In Watts, Compton, Chicago, wherever, we got all these people all over the country saying, yes, we go by this code. We gonna be against attacks on people that are not involved with street gang, with the drug trade, or the illegal business at all. All that kidnapping and shooting drive-bys out the car, we against that. But I don't think people would be aware of that, especially if, you're just watching, your media in your little ecosystem and your echo chamber, and you're sort of from, innocent Whitesville like I am, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're really paying attention, you're not going to get that nuance. Or what does that mean? A thug life? Because when I first heard that, I always thought it meant, that he was glorifying being a gangster.
So the only part of my experience that touches on this is the U.S. military has been traditionally a route out of poverty for either the poor or the newly arrived. So like prior to the Civil War, one of the immigrant waves was the Irish, and they were both poor and newly arrived. So a vast overrepresentation in the Union Army that fought and won our Civil War was Irish. And that was just the way it was. But we have 250 years now of that history where Americans that might not have the best way forward in life will join the military because they might join it for a steady paycheck, but it also is an honorable profession that has controls that you might feel safe in because you can get away from your previous neighborhood that might not have been safe. And now you're in the military, and there's you've got the rank structure that works up and down. Like I said, if you receive an illegal order from above, you report it back because you have rights as a junior rank and you have to be aware. So the military can be very attractive. What that means in this context is that the military gets a lot of recruits out of the poor parts of the United States. We will get people, a lot of people that are trying to escape gang life. They often would join the gangs as younger teenagers to get that sort of protection, because if you join a gang, you have brotherhood if it's a male gang, for lack of a better word, if it's both, if it's everybody. But some people have your back. It's a bit of security, it's comradeship, it's a sense of belonging. But if they're trying to escape that, a lot of them will join the military, which then the military has to deal with it. So you've got people coming out of that culture. And so we have, but that's what I was, when Tupac was talking about, it could actually be a positive force. One of the lessons of leadership is you don't always have to do it. It's not always the right choice, but one of the leadership tools that you have is instead of making somebody come to you, you meet them where they are, because they are currently not able to come to you, but you still have to lead them. So if you've got somebody that is coming from a troubled past, and they might have some weird perspectives on life, you actually have to go to where they are. And so the idea of the military can provide you, we've got your back, we've got security, you're safe here, we can provide for you. It's not drugs, but it's the U.S. military. It's not the crime money, but you're getting a regular paycheck. You have a barracks to live in. There's a dining facility on base. You can go get food. If you have paycheck problems, there's the thrift store in the Air Force. We have the Airman's Attic where you can go get free clothing, free toys for your kids, things like that. We've got your back. And so it's kind of interesting. I'd never paid much attention to Tupac because I'm kind of where you are. That wasn't my life. I'm a metalhead. So if you ask me about Metallica, Nine Inch Nails, or Ozzy Osbourne, maybe I'm your guy. But yeah, I've dealt with some of those recruits. I've gone to schools in not happy parts of the United States as a recruiter. I wasn't a recruiter, but that was my job right there. I was to be the face of the U.S. military to people that might want this option in life, and to talk to them. And so it's a real thing where the gangs might provide what they're looking for, but that's not really what they're looking for, and the military might be the better choice. So one of the things that I have said at least once is the military could be your new gang.
Yeah.
We can be your brothers and sisters.
Yeah. I used to, I knew a police officer who was like the media guy, and he used to say, yeah, we have the biggest gang in town.
Well, and a lot of times it's like that. And it's language is a mutual agreement on meaning to words. Mm-hmm. And if you get the meaning across by saying the police is a gang,
right?
Yeah.
And meaning, and that brings us back to the word thug. I thought about it and I thought, man, like it can be taken in so many ways, that thumbnail. And I hope that it's so easy to be misinterpreted and even accused of things by posting something like that on just a thumbnail, because thug still can mean other things. Like some people call Vladimir Putin a thug. Some people call Donald Trump a thug, mm-hmm. right?
It's kind of like this mindless coercive violence kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And in the Donald Trump way, when I would think Trump as a thug, I would be thinking like the Al Capone kind of a mafia kind
right.
of thing.
So, there's that. And then that brought me back to thinking that, okay, so this you shouldn't just go to the default. You're a racist just because you post something like that, and I don't know, is Elon Musk racist because he referred to the person?
Well, he said racist things in the past,
suspect, but I don't know. But I didn't mean it in a racist way. It was a quote, but it just got me to thinking about the meaning of words. And then also it brought me back full circle to how many of this incident in Chicago, again, being used to jack up emotions by framing it as a racially motivated crime, and maybe an act of terrorism. So you've got two reasons, I guess, for people to get upset about it. But that's when I started to look up stats. And then I thought, just a few weeks ago, out in that crazy ostrich farm, right?
We're back to that.
We're back to it. Brought me back, of all things, it brought me back to that, because what happened?
Do we need to talk about RFK's poetry, or do we just need to leave that alone?
Well, let me show you this, because this incident, somebody allegedly threw gasoline on a woman, a neighbor next to the farm, had been feuding or disputing or upset with the ostrich farm. Somebody went there dressed in black with a mask. And, well, I'll show you. This is video as it happened. Police there.
I'm a very I'm like
this guy was taken into custody.
I'm a that's what I do. And what I see from that,
but apparently he's not the guy. And they're going to show video here off a screen.
It's just beyond, normalities, and it's just truly I don't know what's going on with all that, but it doesn't represent these people, and it doesn't represent the crowd. So all these people here are on your side.
We've got a video, and it's not Tim in there.
Standing against that. You got a video?
No, there's a video with somebody all in black and a black mask.
There's the guy with the video.
Hey, there's a guy with a video over here.
Bring that up to the police. Oh, you have it there. Good. They're screaming bloody murder, and then I shot him.
Hey, you guys, let the officers just
She's got a major problem. Mrs. Fingerling's
Hey, can you back it? Sorry, no. Yep, no problem. Just back it up a little bit, freeze frame it, and I'm going to take a picture of that. That's okay.
I don't know which one would be the best frame to. There's one that's right in front of this white billboard. That's not the guy that was with the black mask. No. Looks like a blue mask to me. Hat with some kind of white lettering on it. Black pants, black shirt.
So we're told that from police that they believe that the person involved was a part of the protest at the farm. Apparently a white person, which made me think, well, okay, so here's an example of somebody who maybe apparently allegedly tried to set a woman on fire. White person at the this is crazy stuff. And I've looked it up. As far as I know, as of today, no formal charges have been laid. And this is, as a journalist, as somebody covering the story, I'm also concerned because I was on a live stream, somebody talking about this with somebody. I didn't run we ran some of the video, but somebody took the video of the live stream and then overlaid pictures of a person that they said was guilty of it while I'm talking, as though I'm saying this person did it. And it made, I don't know. So now this video's out there and it looks like I'm accusing an actual suspect. Anyway, the whole thing is, this is why you have to leave it to the cops, let them solve the crime, investigate it properly, and if charges are warranted, and I don't know if they are, because for all I know, the whole thing was made up, or the woman really did get punched in the face, and there really was I don't know. The cops have the information. We have to wait. We still don't have formal charges laid, but this shows that this kind of stuff, it goes on probably more than is reported. But it isn't always just a black person. It isn't always just a white person. Everybody has to be treated as an individual, and the rule of law should be applied equally across the board. And I don't know why charges still have not been laid formally. If that's not accurate, please let me know. But that's the information I was able to come up with today, which I think is really weird, given that they have video, they have people that they know are suspects. Again, really weird stuff from that farm. To come full circle with the Tupac thing and the Chicago thing, and then now this thing, and it's just bottom line is stay calm, let the cops do their jobs, get the real information, and I would hope that there isn't a double standard when it comes to the law, and the law is applied equally across the board.
Well, and one of the problems in these kinds of situations, like I was saying, people that are used to dealing with rapidly evolving situations, a fast-paced environment, how buzzy can I get here, that you get used to the idea that the first information that you get isn't necessarily true. And so you have to be prepared to be mentally flexible. And a lot of the times you'll get headlines screaming out and like, I was first to report it, but it's just completely wrong. But because it's out there already, there's going to be people that's all they heard. One of the, that old chestnut for disinformation campaigns is that, what was it? A lie travels around the world 12 times before the truth can get out of bed. And so if you're trying to be an honest consumer and somebody that is actually interested in knowing what actually happened as opposed to what was first reported, then stay mentally flexible, be willing to say you don't know, be willing to, if you're presented with new information, to be willing to say, look, I was wrong, and change your mind. And
I guess, and my final thought on this, guys, and I hope this helps everybody a little bit tonight, is now more than ever, it's important to just like keep a level head. Don't jump to conclusions when you see these things happening and you see people automatically defaulting to this is a racially motivated thing, or the other way, when they're trying to gin this stuff up to get you upset. I would say take a step back and take a deep breath, let it play out, get the real facts. That's especially important right now because we just had 2 National Guardsmen shot. We have two countries on edge, more than 2. People are upset. It's easy to overreact to things. It's easy for people to lead people astray when people are emotional. So we need to stay calm so that we're thinking rationally and critically so that we deal with facts, not just emotion, because that's how we save our country. That's how we save our democracy. That's how we save our freedom. And that's my final thought for tonight. Mike McCarrick, thank you so much, my friend, for helping us out here this evening. And Mavericks, I'll see you back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.